Alright, so I feel as though it's necessary for me to make a follow-up video. Not necessary, but I think it's only the respectful thing to do. I picked out a few comments from my YouTube video, a few messages in the Discord server that I want to kind of touch on, some things that I have some opinions on that I think are worth discussing. One thing I need to make very clear, and I feel as though this is obvious, but it does need to be said, I do not wish for anyone to be bothered because I spoke about things. I do not want anyone to be annoyed or talked to, or, I'm not looking for a witch hunt by any means. I do not agree with that in the slightest. I don't want anyone to be directly attacked or directly confronted just because I spoke about something on a stupid YouTube video, especially the developers, just because that's who this conversation is focused around, because they obviously develop Phantom Forces. These are some comments that I picked out. I will put them all on screen. I may not read them all word for word, but you can read them yourselves if you so feel inclined to. The first one here is saying that the high levels are at fault. To kind of summarize his comment is that the high levels are ruining the game because new players come in and they just get absolutely destroyed. And I'm going to say this in a very blunt way, and you may not like it. The truth of the matter is you're just not very good at the video game, and there's nothing wrong with that by any means. I'm very good at a lot of FPS games, but I'm far from the best. I'm far from being even the top 1,000 on many video games. I play Valorant as an example. My peak is Immortal 2. That is 2 ranks away from the highest rank in the game. Any day I get on to play that game, there will be at least one game that I play where I get embarrassed by someone else. No matter how good I am, there will always be someone out there equally, if not better than me, that makes me feel as though I am terrible at the game. That is just the way it is. And the unfortunate truth, in any game that has a player versus player aspect as the primary focus, such as first-person shooters, you will get beaten by people at points. You may only get beaten by a little. You may get absolutely embarrassed. That happens to me all the time. That will happen to your average player on any game all the time. I once had Spirals, another fellow content creator from many years ago, told me, and I quote, said that he can't imagine what it's like for some new player to get into a lobby with me. And this was when I was at my peak, where like my average kills per game was like 120. I was unbelievable at the game at the time. And it's funny because, yeah, if I was a brand new player and I got into a lobby like that, I'd be like, oh my God, is this normal? Like, are people that good all the time? The truth is no. There's people better than me, way better than me nowadays. And I occasionally get into lobbies with them. And I do have to fight to actually earn my stay in those lobbies. It's okay. It happens. But I have the competitive mindset and I understand that. Some people may not be as competitive as me and these things may bother them more. Perfectly acceptable to feel that way, but you also need to look in the mirror and understand the truth of the matter for that. Next one here is a very awesome point and a very simple one. Phantom Forces is just really old, guys. A lot of the resentment and a lot of the issues I have stem from a lot of differing opinions and, things that I would have preferred versus things, kind of how they happened from many years ago. The game is just really old, and trying to keep up with times and trying to keep a game this old fresh is a very difficult thing, and I apologize for making that sound discounted through a lot of my rants. They have tried to make things feel more fresh. My issue with it is that it's just simply taken way too long. The easy example is daily challenges. It took like 7 years for that to come out, despite being heavily requested for such a long time. Keybinds on the game took forever to come out, despite being, again, very heavily requested for a long time. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not a developer, but I don't think something like keybinds is a really difficult thing to do. Even the challenges probably aren't a crazy undertaking. The guys at Stylus Studios are very talented developers. I think it could have been done way sooner than it actually happened. This one, again, just to reiterate, this is a conversation. I am no more right than, the developers or the next person having these conversations just because I have a YouTube channel. Me having an audience doesn't make my opinion right or more valid than anyone else's. But Lito said that one thing he finds disingenuous about all these videos is they always lack depth or nuance when discussing player counts. And he used the example that I kind of clickbaited, which is looking at the player count on a Monday of 3,500 and saying, wow, PF is 65% down from the 10,000 players during COVID time. And I'm fairly sure I did touch on it being a COVID time number that I used. If I did not, let's clarify this here. The minus 65% is absolutely to get your attention. It's like saying that movement killed the game. Movement didn't kill the game. It's obviously still players. There's people still enjoying it. There's people who enjoy the movement update. I don't even have a huge issue with the movement update. I just don't think it was done in the right way. But the minus 65% is absolutely just a way to pull attention and to the video. That's the way YouTube works. Is it disingenuous to an extent? Absolutely. Is it the most respectful way to go about things? Absolutely not. But that's just the way things are. And everyone can have an opinion on it. I don't like it to a certain degree as well, but there's a game to be played in the content creation scene, and that's just the way it is. However, him saying that is a completely reasonable statement. It's completely fair of him to feel that way. Another thing that he said the other day is that PF is certainly not growing appreciably. It has always been stagnant, and each year we're always going to be bleeding more veteran players naturally. 1000% true. Players will eventually just simply get bored and move on to a new game. Absolutely. Happens all the time on any game or anything in life. People will just simply move on. I think, though, in my opinion, that the players who have been leaving the game, the veteran players, the long-term players, their hand has been forced a lot sooner than it would have been naturally. I think a lot of updates, I shouldn't even say I have been told countless stories. I know many friends, we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of people who have all shared very similar stories to me, where one specific update or one group of updates force them out of the game because they just don't feel like it's the right thing for the game, or they feel like they were just made with not the greatest intentions or not the best kind of research into them. And not everyone is right in that. Again, these are all opinions. The way that the developers update the game is how they wanted to, and the way that we feel as players is how we want to. In an opinion-based discussion like this, neither of us are more right than the other. They have been forced out of the game a lot sooner than they would have, kind of myself included at times. And I played through the worst times of Phantom Forces, where hit registration was basically non-existent at times, where cheaters were, 3 to 5 in every single lobby. Again, this is more of like a Roblox issue. They do what they can. Where gun balancing was at the worst it's ever been, where hit registration didn't really exist for what felt like a year, where all these issues went on and on and on. We begged for updates. We begged for any sort of transparency of what's going on behind the scenes. We begged for literally any sort of lifeline to help us out, and it didn't come. And I still logged in every day to play the game. I still made videos about the game. And granted, I may yap, I may complain a lot, but I was passionate about it. And to this day, I still want the game to succeed. I still want the developers to succeed, both inside and outside of this game. I hold no resentment towards them. I have no issues with them on a personal level. We have differing opinions, and I use my channel as a place to kind of yap and complain about it. This is another one to kind of touch on from the original topic here, is this guy loves the new movement update. Awesome for him. I'm glad he does. He says that it actually gives newer or casual players a chance to actually play the game because some level 300 no life can't super jump or slide or spam around every corner. Again, I hate to be the one to say it. You're just not as good at the game as other people. Don't get me wrong. Certain things like movement are used to their advantage. Certain guns, where they're unbalanced, are used to people's advantage. At the end of the day, though, those players are simply just better than you, with or without the movement, with or without the gun most of the time. Whether you like that opinion or not, or really not an opinion, fact, whether you like that or not, it's the truth, and you need to get over it. I never learned any of the super fancy movement. I never learned the M slide or whatever the other stupid names for some of that tech is. I never learned it, and I still do just fine on my own. And here's the final one that I kind of want to touch on. This guy Clipsal said that the game has sped up so much, even higher power guns and crazier movement, yet now they suddenly put a hold on the movement, which I fully kind of agree on, and I think this might be one of the best takes about this, is that slowing down the movement isn't necessarily the biggest issue. I agree with him that the game has sped up so much over the years with things like gun balancing and along those lines, basically, or even like containers, a really small mapping in the game, things like that. The game has sped up so much on an overall level that slowing down the movement, I don't think is the right way to go all in on, right? I think slowing down the movement is absolutely kind of a good thing, and I do agree with it. I don't think it was done right. I think it was done maybe a little bit too quick. I think we could have taken some steps a little bit slower, but by all means, here we are. I think that guns as a whole also need to slow down as well, because slowing down the movement without slowing down the guns are still going to kill you in like a quarter of a second, and you don't have the movement now to get away from it, right? It's hard to avoid those super fast time to kill weapons without the movement. So it's kind of a weird balance, and trying to slow the entire game down, a ridiculous undertaking. Let's acknowledge that. I wish we could go at it, add an overall picture, and kind of take more time to adjust things and see where we get, rather than just maybe targeting movement as being the only problem, because I don't fully agree with that. But that's where we're at. I wish the game the best. I wish the developers the best. And I hope that we could have some sort of change that meets a happy middle ground where the developers' vision of the game and the community's outspoken opinion of the game is somewhat on an equal playing field. Appreciate you guys listening.